were talking about coasting. That's the new coasting, just letting AI do everything for you. The added value to AI is the human on top of it. We call it human in the loop. It's exactly the same thing.
Technology, aviation, Microsoft, aviation, how does that work? There's a pretty symbiotic relationship there. Microsoft need to travel to its offices, but when I need to send an email or when I need to write a document, it's Microsoft or it's a Google kind of thing. When most of the world, that is the relationship that we have.
20% of their inbound email from customers is being taken care of from generative AI, and that is from changing seats, rebooking customers, paying refunds, taking payments. All of those things is being done by generative AI. Microsoft wrote the responsible AI standards in 2019. This is 2019 when we kind of knew it was coming. In 2022, we tore the book up that we just wrote to rewrite it because it moved on so far. And I think that's going to happen with the general technology approach to things.
Welcome everyone back to the Flying High Club. Thank you for viewing, listening, subscribing as you're doing. We're on episode 5 now, and it has been an amazing adventure so far. I'm so happy with the responses I'm receiving and the messages I'm receiving to all the guests that are coming on and the content that we're covering. It is an amazing journey so far, and we're just at the start of it, and we can't wait. And that brings me on very quickly to who we have here today. I describe him as probably the most in-demand man in travel. And when you realize where they're from, you realize it's not a pilot. It's not someone that is running an airline. It's someone just on the fringes outside of running an airline, but they are a technology provider. He's probably being chased by every single airline for his time across all of Europe, and his colleagues probably across the world. But today we have the CTO of Microsoft UK, Dan Williams, with us today. Hi, Dan. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for having me. I do appreciate it.
No problem. I mean, Dan, we were short on the intro because I want to really dive in, and you well and truly are one of the most in-demand men. I've seen you all around, you road showing your way around. I imagine everyone is emailing you constantly to get their time there. That's why I'm so appreciative to get your time. So thanks for coming.
No problem at all. No problem at all. It certainly is busy at the moment. It certainly is really, really busy. Everything associated to AI at the moment with what we've been doing with Microsoft, and I think the stuff that's been coming out more recently with the OpenAI, very quick changes. It was like a soap opera.
Yeah, we're gonna come to that. That was I was waiting for my popcorn to watch and what's going on.
Everything's back to normal now. Everything's fine. So Sam did work for us. He's now back at OpenAI. There's a new board in place. Everything's fine. Carry on as normal.
That's amazing. But I mean, look, we're gonna dive into a lot of those details, and we'll come to those questions. And I guess most of the users, listeners here, are probably looking for that. But what I really want to start with, and what's kind of really applicable, is a lot of people and young people that are listening have been like, aviation, Microsoft, how, where's the relationship? We're going to dive into that, but I want to sort of start on your career of how did things start for you, educationally, background-wise, towards your journey to CTO of Microsoft? Because that's something, that's an achievement.
Terribly. My early education was terrible. My early career was terrible. But it got me to where I am today. So I was born in Harrow, so not too far away from here. I grew up in Hertfordshire, a little town called Rickmansworth. There's a small part of that called Millen, which was a council estate at the time. I think it still is now. And then I went to a local school, didn't do very well at school. I'm not very academically inclined in any way, shape or form. Barely scraped through my GCSEs and got into college, West Arts College in Watford, and decided to do sports management, which is an interesting one and a question I get all the time in terms of, right, you did sports, you did football, how did you end up in tech? And I suppose we'll go into that. And then from a college perspective, exactly the same thing as school. Really, really struggled academically, just managed to scrape through. A lot of my friends actually did a lot of my coursework to get me into university. And then moved into Bucks New University, I think it was called at the time. And I did a sports management degree with football studies. So I've always been football mad as a kid. Even now, I'm terrible at it. I've always been terrible. I could have never gone pro. You know, those people always turn around and say, I could have played for a
Semi-pro, blew my knee out. That yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was terrible at it all the way through. So I was never going to do it. However, I like the coaching side. I really like the interaction, I like the strategy, I like the tactics. That's very much where I got into. I started my first business actually when I was in university, a company called Fusion Sports, and it was multi-sports coaching. So it wasn't just football, it was athletics, basketball, rugby, anything you can think of. And I actually figured out then I actually enjoy the business side of things. So speaking to potential customers, coming up with a brand, doing all the selling, as well as obviously doing all the coaching. And that's where my first job was selling remainder books. Traveling up and down the country selling remainder books. And for those of you who don't know what remainder books are, they're books that are out of print. So normally what happens is I would go into a retailer and I would sell you this out of print book. Never very popular, normally half price of RRP is what they would sell it for. We would go and do the margin. No shock there, I didn't last particularly long. I think 9 months in, I was like, I can't do this, it's dead boring. And I think the number was up when they started asking me what's my favourite books, and I'm not a big reader either. So they really figured me out quite early on for that one. My next role after that was actually in IT recruitment. I can blame my father for this one. So back in the 70s and the 80s, my dad used to be an IT systems mainframe manager, I think is what they called it. And that's back in the day when computers on mainframes were bigger than this room that we're sitting, absolutely huge. And then he quickly realised actually there's more money in IT recruitment, and he made that flip. And I thought, actually, I could probably do that as well. Started in that role, didn't really like it very quickly because of the culture that's associated to it. So the company that I worked for and the organisation I worked for at the time, very early mornings, late nights, there was a lot of drug culture in there, not something I would ever get involved with. I didn't like the people I was working with. And lo and behold, didn't last long at that one either. There's a bit of a running joke in my family for a short period of time. Every year I'd have a new job. So so after that, I sat there for probably about 3 months trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life. I was quite low, quite depressed, trying to figure out what I was trying to do with my life. I think it was 22, 23 maybe at this point. I just need a career. I need something structured. I need something focused. And that's when I thought, actually, because I used to play a lot of computer games. I used to work on PCs. I used to fix my PC. I used to fix my friends' PCs and stuff like that all the time. I actually thought, I think that might be quite a good role. And I know you had Moti on here last time, and you were talking about dopamine hits.
Yeah.
And that was my dopamine hit. Fixing things was my dopamine hit. And then from there, I decided to reinvest myself. So I already had loads of student debt associated to myself. And then I thought, actually, let me try this out. I'll take one good punt at it, I'll have a good go, and I'll see what happens. So I took out an education loan through, I think it was Barclays Bank or whoever at the time, and I enrolled in a load of technical training through the National IT Learning Centre. They're gone now, but they were quite big at the time. And I just started knocking through all these technical certifications, learning the theory, doing the practical. And then I landed my first role in a very small IT consultancy in Watford called Quorum Business Systems. Again, they're no longer functioning. There's a bit of a rhythm going on here now. And there I started to get my grounding and everything. So working with customers, learning how everything works from servers to networks to computers to cloud computing as it started to come into play. Windows, obviously Microsoft being a core part of my learning. And then from there, sort of very quickly worked up through the ranks to a senior analyst there. So joined the company, very low salary as a junior role, spent 3 years there and sort of exited as a senior analyst.
But so here is it's quite fascinating. I mean, I'm just even though we're not even at the one of the juicier parts, but that journey is, I guess, so relatable to the especially the young people of today, and exactly the reason why we create this. So I'm amazed again, like this is great content for them, because that journey is so applicable to someone where they've gone down a path, they've gone down their hobby, they're following their hobby, they're sort of trialing and erroring after university and realizing, oh God, the world's different than I actually imagined it. I actually, hats off for taking that bet and reinvesting in yourself. And I know that debt comes with it. And there are opportunities, luckily today, where you can do government paid internships and diplomas and things like that to upskill, especially in IT, and we'll come to AI and things like that, which is amazing. So, I mean, tons of people hopefully will be listening, or they're seeing their young kids to sort of say, listen, like, this is so relatable to what I'm seeing of you. Look, have a listen. So that's quite amazing. I mean, that's not something I've ever known as long as we've known, kind of thing. But was there a point of sort of a mental challenge to sort of say, God, I'm just going to give up. I'm just going to do what everyone else does, whatever that is, whether that's retail or anything like that, and give up on a dream that you may have had? And if you did have a dream, what was it?
So I gave up, I think, probably a little bit too early on the football coaching side of things. So I did coaching from, I think, the age of about 14. So I've got my UEFA B, I think that's what it's called these days, which is like one down from the pro license. Sorry, the UEFA A, UEFA B is the pro license. I worked for Watford Football Club, Watford Academy, and it was at that stage it was all very sort of minimal wage. So coaches don't tend to get paid a lot in that sort of realm. And I just thought it's really, really difficult to make it to the next stage. If you look at all the professional managers out there, they've normally had a solid professional footballing career. There's a few exceptions to that rule. I certainly didn't think I was going to be an exception to the rule. So I looked around in terms of, okay, I tried a bit of sales. Yeah, not great at it. But let's try and combine that with my technical acumen at the time. And weirdly enough, there was best bit of advice I got was from a customer when I used to work in Blockbusters when they used to exist. I was running the day shift instead of being at uni. And he came in, I was just chatting away to him. And he said, do you want a bit of advice? I was like, yeah, sure, because I don't want to be here forever. He was basically saying, take one thing that you're really good at, which is generally talking to people in my way, and then combine it with something else that you're really good at. And then there, you'll be fine. And I was like, well, what exactly do you mean? And he's like, okay, to give you an example, I work on an oil rig 3 months a year, and that's me done for the year. And he was like, all I do is I fly in, I manage people, and I fly out, and I get paid a lot. So he's taken his experience and his knowledge within refinery and his people management skills, and he's built himself a very comfortable life and a career off the back of it. And that's exactly what I thought when I came out of that second sales job, to say, I need to do something where I get the best of both worlds, what I'm good at. Now I'm here.
Wow. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, you sort of, again, demonstrated, there's a couple of things there. You've demonstrated this sort of perseverance and sort of mental challenges and how to possibly overcome them. Investing in yourself and really looking at yourself and saying, okay, I'm seeing a trend in the world. Maybe I should head towards that direction. And also having the faith that, okay, I do have a skill, because that's probably the hardest journey of identifying that skill. So that's valuable advice someone's given you of look at a skill, but that's just the advice. It's the practical part of unpinning it of how do I get to knowing what I'm good at? And that's a really hard conversation sometimes to have. Like, was it outright and obvious what you were good at, or did you have to go through a little more self-discovery? How did you identify that?
I think it was really from my parents. So my mum was always convinced that I could have been a second-hand car salesman. In terms of, I have the gift of the gab. Generally speaking, I can talk my way out.
I can talk to that.
Yeah, exactly. So you know exactly what I'm talking about from that point. And that's what I thought, actually, and then I started to hone that when I was working in those sort of hardcore sales roles. And I enjoyed the talking and the relationship side of it rather than trying to ram product down people's throats. So that's sort of how I realized that sort of things. And then because computing was a hobby, the two just sort of married up together beautifully. So one thing my parents was telling me, and I sort of built on top of that through early careers and stuff like that. And I had lots of customer service type roles and things like that when I was younger. And then just taking one of my hobbies and going, right, let's just mash these two together. I think for young people these days, my wife has a lot of younger siblings and they're just glued to their devices all the time. But that's a digital skill, right? You try and, what they're doing on a daily basis, trying to hand that off to an older person can be quite difficult. So
yeah,
I would say for the younger generation coming through, use those digital skills to your advantage. Absolutely. They will know things like TikTok, for example. I know you had Motive on here. I don't have TikTok. I don't have Instagram. I don't want to do it because I just don't really see the value in my head. But the new generation coming through will absolutely do it. You said yourself on the last podcast that when you book a holiday, you book it through Instagram, you book it through TikTok. That's a completely different industry.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, being, one of those people that loves technology and sort of loves innovation and things like that, it's really hard to stay on top of it. I've always said, I want to be on top of this technology all my life. Trust me, trust. When TikTok was a challenge for me, I just didn't understand it. Things like Snapchat, I didn't understand. What's the point of sending a picture that disappears?
Snap is what I call it.
But it didn't make sense to me. But people cotton on and sometimes stumble upon these opportunities, and they do amazing things. And this is it. I mean, meeting people like yourselves and others that we've met in previous episodes that sort of open your eyes, and you realize like it's a great platform to reach people, and that's where you'll see a lot of Gen Z are there, and that's the market. If corporates aren't, or conventional blue chip companies aren't there, there are people out there that are young brands themselves or people that have a following that can help you do that for you. I mean, there was like we said, we mentioned a couple of times, Mohammed Tahir. He's done great things just from his passion, and he's got a platform, and he's bigger than a lot of brands on that platform. And now those brands are helping him, using him to get help on that platform, which is amazing. And it's just these new opportunities that sort of pan out. So yeah, anyone young out there, you can use your passion for technology or your digital skills, as you were, whether that's gaming, everything like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's tons of opportunity out there. I guess you just you got to put your spin and an edge on it. And if it's fun, if it's enjoyable to you, if it's passion, you stick at it, and it becomes your hobby.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't become work.
Absolutely.
So leading on, so you've sort of done your the re-education, went into a few of the tech roles, and then how did you end up in the role that you are today?
So yeah, that's an interesting. So I'll take you back sort of 2 roles prior. So there was an organisation, big partner of Microsoft, called A&S Group, and this isn't a plug for them by any way, shape or form, but that's where I started to bridge into real sort of enterprise customers. So working with them from a tech stack perspective, from a sales perspective, from a solutions perspective, taking business requirements and then turning it into something tangible, effectively, and that was across all industries. But they did a little bit of work in aviation, and that's sort of just where I started to get into it from a real perspective. I've always loved flying. I've been flying since I was a kid. Weirdly enough, I was terrified of flying about 10 years ago. Wouldn't get on an aircraft, just couldn't do it. I'm fine now, by the way.
Was that trauma? Was that just a bad episode? Or?
No idea. I'm sure it had something to do with the Final Destination film years ago. I'm sure that's when you get into a plane, my brain just sort of switched to that mode. I still did the thing where you check the tray table whether or not, but it's weird. It was a weird thing to happen to me, but anyway, I'm absolutely fine now. So that's how I started to get bridged into aviation. And I was there for a couple of years, and I took my big leap into a tech leadership role for an organisation called Camwood. And they're, again, small consultancy, but they do a lot of technology spin-outs. So I was head of technology, so I was looking after the technical team, as well as sort of supporting the sales cycle and everything else. So I was responsible for a small architecture team, but I was also head of technology for a company called Infinity Evergreen at the time. So they were a startup, so I was responsible for the dev team there. And that's where I started to really push myself in terms of learning new technology, getting well out of my comfort zone, because I'd never been head of before. I'd never been a product owner before. I had no idea how to bring a product to market. I was just feeling my way through the dark, I suppose. And I made a hell of a lot of mistakes all the way through that. That potentially cost a lot of money. But through that journey, I got to a point where I brought the Camwood business into a position where they were stable, revenue increased, profits increased, the service offering that they had to their customers increased, the startup business became a fully fledged product, started to sell it out to customers, partnered with Microsoft on their startup ecosystem. So as far as I'm concerned, I did a really, really good job there. But that job really took its toll on me. So I was working 7 days a week, 16-hour days, all the time. And that went on for about 2.5 years, and I started to get really bad burnout. And the next colleague of mine from A&S, Beth Williams, or Beth Elliott now, she's married, she moved across to Microsoft, and she'd been in my ear for about 2 years saying, you need to come check it out. It's really, really good over here. And I was just like, I'm doing my thing over here. Just, speak to me in a few years and things might have changed. And she knew I had a passion about aviation anyway. And it was just perfect timing where she came over to me and said, this thing in aviation that we're trying to fill, I think you'd be a great fit, etc., etc. I went for the role. Spoke to Dave Sayers, who was the manager of the unit at the time. He's now moved on. I also spoke to Howard Lewis, who runs sort of a larger part of the business in the UK, and everything fit really well. The passion for the aviation sector, the passion for the technology, the Microsoft element of it, and I think it's all sort of taken off since January, right? So I came into post. The first sort of 12 months was really sort of a challenge for me from a professional and a personal life perspective. Trying to bring yourself into the Microsoft machine, and it's an absolute monster of a machine.
It's a behemoth. It is.
There is a dictionary for acronyms as soon as you join that you have to try and learn, and you won't be able to learn it. And they create new ones on the fly all the time. So trying to onboard onto that as well as deal with all my personal stuff was a challenge. But when the OpenAI partnership got announced in January this year, it just went nuts. So I was desperately trying to work with a number of different customers that were well entrenched with AWS and Google, and it was just no thank you, come back to us later. But as soon as this AI thing landed, it was just like go. Everyone wanted a piece of us. And it was probably the most excited I've been in my career, because we are just talking about industry and game-changing things now. It's absolutely fantastic.
And there's a couple of things you touched on there that I want to go into, and that game-changingness we're going to come to. But it's something that we've had in the past with a couple of people that are raised, and I've never pressed on it because I just don't know how it could be received. But there's a part where everyone mentions challenges, burnout, the emotional side of work and stuff like that. And this is catered for probably people who are, it's good to know when you're getting into industries, but it's good to know even just when you're working that, becoming in a senior role and stuff like that, you get your remunerations and your benefits like that and your titles. But sometimes the pressure and stuff that comes with, I don't think people realize the mental pressure that comes with, the long hours. I mean, everyone says, I work hard and things, but there are nights where you have to pitch to a client, you're staying till 9-10 p.m. to be ready for 9 a.m. in the morning next day, presentation, put your best foot forward, putting those things, sending them, and then you're working for a global organization that is headed out of the US, staying on with US times. You are exhausting yourself. Is there any times or events that sort of occurred where you sort of said, like, I don't know if I can handle this, this is exhausting? And how do you come out of that exhaustion? Because I think that's quite key for people to they may be going through it now.
So I think from a Microsoft perspective, it's pretty solid the way they look after their people. So there is a very big well-being part of the culture. But my previous roles, I'll use Camwood as a perfect example. I'd be working with the development team, and bearing in mind I can't code, so I'm absolutely useless. So I'd be sitting there on a call with them till 4 a.m. trying to work out this issue with the product because customer needed it the next day, and it had to be done because it was a startup. You all pull together. Because I can't develop, I'm effectively useless. I'm just making virtual cups of tea, and then having to sleep for an hour, 2 hours, be up at 7, pitch at 7:30. And then just do it again and again and again. I think the way for me to get out of it, because I didn't have too many options, I came into that business with an idea of what I wanted to achieve, and I achieved those things. And I can exit the business quite comfortable that I did what I said I was going to do. Everything's in a good state. I'll hand it off to the next person to carry it on. And for me, it was just having to leave the business. It's as simple as that. If I'd stayed doing those things, doing the same things, I'd probably still be doing them now. Because once you set an expectation, they expect you to hit that expectation every single time. Mm-hmm. That's not just from a quality of work perspective, but it's time, personal time, weekends, all those sorts of things as well.
Yeah, I mean, work life there's a balance, and they always say work life, right? Have that balance, but it does encroach on your weekends, especially if you're, client facing, customer facing, to be ready for that client, and vice versa. It happens in others' careers as well. But no, I think that's an amazing lead up. I mean, it's quite a journey. I think it's definitely relatable to tons of people that would be similar. I would take some similar solace as well. I mean, you came from a sports science. I came from a biology background. I'm a biomedical scientist by education. I ended up in aviation.
There you go.
it is that kind of work. I mean, your degree doesn't define what you end up doing for the rest of your life. So it's up to you as the person,
Yeah.
right? It is just the skills and the people and the network that you get along the way, which I think is the most important part of a degree. And you know, it's a really good time in anyone's usually careers. It's usually a really good time where you're sort of for the first time being, you know, exposed to so many people like that. But yeah, so that's a so we're coming on to January of this year now. Like it is the hot topic, and I'm very well aware of the, you know, cloud providers being pushed back, and you know everyone did go. You know, the trend was, you know, a couple of years ago, and still probably is you need to move your systems into cloud, and you know, well and truly, there's only so many that do it, and there are only so many providers. But the fear is always, am I going to be locked in? You know, all this sort of stuff. Like, so how did you get into and understanding the concept of cloud and getting becoming a real owner of that space? And the other part of, you know, you said you had the ambition and a sort of passion in aviation and stuff. How did you work your way into that, and how do you find that space, like compared to others? Because I'm sure there's much more enjoyable places with higher margins and higher budgets than aviation. But
How dare you say that? It's the best sector in the world. And I think it is the best sector in the world, personally.
I do
But
too.
Yeah,
That's why
we're
I'm here.
quite biased, though,
Yes.
right? So I think from a cloud computing perspective, I got in super early doors. So I think cloud computing as a whole, probably about 10, 12 years old now, from a concept perspective. And when I worked the company previous to ANS, they're called ATEC Cloud now. There you go. They were ATEC support. That's where I really started to cut my teeth on cloud computing, and there was this new thing sort of coming across, and everyone was still very much, I like my tin, I like my on-prem stuff. Cloud's just this fad that will disappear. And I sold the first cloud deal, or sort of worked through or solutionized, sorry, rather than sell, the first cloud deal for that organization. And they are, I believe, their biggest customer at the moment. It's a lawn tennis association. I think Wimbledon, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they're massive advocates of Microsoft and Azure and cloud computing from that perspective. And for me, it was just keep pushing, keep learning more. If a customer asked me a question, didn't know the answer, you better believe I'd have that answer in 30 minutes because I'd go away and find it. And I think that's really important too. And again, I hate to use the same example Moti was saying, just keep pushing yourself. Just keep doing it. Take yourself out of your comfort zone. That's what you have to do to excel. Because if you, and there's a lot of this in the tech industry, that people just sit at the same job for 40 years and they're comfortable. Great, that's fine. But for me, as an example, I need to keep moving forwards, otherwise I get bored.
Yeah.
I need to keep learning new things. I need to try new things. I volunteer for as much as physically possible because it's different. And if it doesn't go well, try something else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good story to have, and I think that is a lot of the common theme now going forward. I mean, you know, I can take my father's examples and, you know, older generation's example. They stick to the same company for 34, 40 years. Now a lot of it is becoming experience based. I just want to have the best time and the best money possible and just enjoy my life and have that balance and do something either that's really, you know, fulfilling, either to myself or to the world, and actually having good. And then I'll move on and I'll do something different. I'll just have fun along the way. I think that, you know, many people will still have that dream, and I'm not portraying everyone in any specific way, but, you know, when you have that kid of, I'm going to run this company, I think a lot of that dream's going out the window now because of what the likes of social media has exposed, what the world is and what is capable and what is possible. I mean, that's why we've created this platform, right? I mean, like I said at the start, you know, technology, aviation, you know, Microsoft, you know, aviation, how does that work? There's a pretty symbiotic relationship there. You know, Microsoft need to travel to its offices. Guess what they use? They use airplanes, right? Most of the time, buses, trains, yes, where applicable, but over the Atlantic, it's that. But when I need to send an email, or when I need to write a document, it's Microsoft or it's a Google kind of thing. When most of the world, that is the relationship that we have. You know, and that's just a highlight if anyone didn't realize how this is related. But so that's getting to Microsoft and getting the challenge. So I'm going to ask, actually, it's always a fascinating thing. What is it like working for Microsoft? I mean, I've been in your offices.
Yeah.
I'm I'm very well taken care of when I come to this. I have to say, but what's it like culturally, around vibe? You're taken care of well, building it. I mean, it's very different to other people's workplaces that you see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the thing that I picked up very quickly is the level of diversity within the organization is really impressive. So, as a perfect example, we have a female CEO, Claire Barkley, and she's a fantastic CEO. Within the board, corp level in the US, there's a lot of diversity included in that particular board set as well. So I think from a diversity perspective, the first day, I remember walking into TVP, or Thames Valley Parks, which is the main HQ in Reading for Microsoft, and I was just looking around sort of the main concourse, and at every single table there was little cards basically showing Latinx, so explanations and definitions about Latinx. I started reading it. I was like, okay, this is the first time I've ever been exposed to this. I'd never heard of that particular phrase at that particular point, and I was absolutely blown away. But my first entry into Microsoft was a absolute cultural shift entirely, and the different types of people that you bump into almost on a regular basis. They can be based from anywhere around the world, either permanently there or just visiting, seeing customers, and just allowing you to experience lots of different things. So I think from a cultural perspective, it's fantastic. Best place I've worked. If I need to knock off early to do something, whether it's personal well-being or pop down the shop, grab some, there's no quarrel. There's no, you need to be at your desk from 9 to 5, and
So a forward-thinking workplace, people want to outcome orientated. Yeah.
That kind of stuff doesn't exist. And I promise this isn't a plug for people to come work for Microsoft, but it is one of the best employers for that particular reason. They look after the people. Sure, there's bad bits. There's bad bits about every organization, but they try and do the best for their employees effectively. And I think that's showing through take a look at the advancement we made from a technology perspective. Take a look at the share price. Take a look at everything that we're doing from a partnership perspective. It's a completely different organization to what it was 25 years ago.
And there's a key part, and I'm an outside observer, and I don't know the ins and outs of Microsoft and how that works, and I'm talking from a global sense. I think I saw I've always renounced or sort of linked Microsoft to Bill Gates. Conventionally, always think that was the person I've always known. And then I saw this new takeover happen where Bill Gates moved on and Satya Nadella came in, and I'm just like, how is that going to work? I mean, let's call it for what it is. I mean, there is a US corporation that is run by, a Caucasian gentleman that's being handed over to an Asian gen. How's that going to be perceived? I'm from a South Asian background, so I'm loving that there is a world leader in this space, and they're going to lead the way for diversity, for inclusion, because it wasn't at the time when they were in charge. The openness that Satya and the sort of lens he took to unlock Microsoft and make it a really open ecosystem, I have to say, he probably risked his job within the period of that, but he did an amazing job to lead to that share price, to that probably culture and things like that. It was big already, but he took it to another level by that. And I don't know him personally, never met him physically. I don't know if you have.
Not yet. I do hope to in the very near future.
But the interactions that he has with his customers on video and things like that, and the things that he's saying that it's okay, to have competition. You can put your tool on our platform. It's perfectly fine. We'll do ours on your platform. It's okay. That didn't exist before. Like, did you? So you had only seen that world, right? But did you see other people who had spoken to other people in Microsoft that sort of saw the same thing?
Yeah. So sort of post Bill Gates, there was Steve Ballmer, and Steve Ballmer was a very hard-nosed sort of sales guy, and that fed through to the culture, I think. And then Satya took over and removed the closeness of the organization. So what I would probably refer to as the Apple approach, which is everything's closed network. That's Apple. Microsoft kind of had the same thing. A little bit of sharing, but not too much. But when Satya took over, obviously the share price went, which is great. But there were partnerships made absolutely everywhere. Oracle, Google, AWS, Apple, just every third party that you can think of, Microsoft, but we're open. We are open source now. And that's a fantastic attitude to have. And the fact that from an organization perspective, we live off partners, delivery partners, integration partners, shows you exactly what the organization is trying to do. And if you get a chance, do take a look at Satya's book, which is Hit Refresh. It's quite an interesting read. The first thing he had to do was tank the Nokia acquisition. So the first thing he had to do was let go a load of Nokia employees. And that was a very tough thing for him to do, but he knew it was the right thing to do because he didn't believe that, I don't know if you remember the Windows Mobile OS, it wasn't particularly great. He didn't believe that was going to be a good move, and he was absolutely right. Absolutely.
So this was Microsoft's acquisition of Nokia that was on the line, and well, good move, right? Hindsight is a wonderful thing, but look how that turned out. That's quite something, and that's a bold decision to come in, because Nokia was on fire back in the day. It was a leading brand in the mobile space, right? It was amazing. I know it may have dwindled at the time when he was coming in, but to make that bold decision, you have to have some sort of conviction in your head of where you're going to go and what the play is. I'm not going to say that you're winning the mobile space in that, definitely not. But I think he's an amazing character, person, and a trendsetter for the other tech organization that probably followed suit after of, we must become open source if they're doing it as well.
He's the reason why we can wear trainers to work now as well, which is a big positive.
Yeah, that's something. So I think it's a interesting segue into sort of the leaders sometimes and the infliction that they can have in culture. I think that's quite amazing. But yeah, I think the next part we sort of think about is now we've led on to is this hot news in January that dropped this out of nowhere. This organization that's non-profit comes and drops this bombshell of, we have this AI called GPT. Anyone heard of it? Where you can ask it kind of anything. Like, oh, here we go, another chatbot. Here we go. And then you see it, and you're like, whoa, this must be simulated. And then you have a go on it, and then you go, wow. And then the juices start flowing of the world.
Yeah.
How was that? Being on the receiving end, hearing that, not even the next part where the partnership and the acquisition sort of part come in, but being on the receiving end of, is this a disruptor to us? How does that go on when that news sort of dropped of OpenAI coming to market?
So I think the initial thing is excitement. New piece of technology, which is it's just mind blowing in terms of the use cases and capabilities. A little bit of fear in terms of, crap, is this going to replace most of the Microsoft stuff? But very quickly we realized that this is a massive enabler. We started getting phone calls from customers that never call us, simply because they're so well entrenched with other vendors, and they're now able to have much better, much healthier conversations with us now around their business strategy, their revenue strategy, what they want to do from a people perspective, how they want to enhance their staff. And that's exactly what this generative AI thing is. It's about enhancing productivity, enhancing staff, enhancing customer experience, all those sorts of things. So for us, it was incredibly exciting. It was a scrabble to try and learn everything that you need to know about AI. And I'm by any stretch of means, I am no AI expert. I am not an AI engineer. I know enough to get by. Yeah. I know how it can impact organizations from a business perspective. And that was kind of the challenge for the first 3 months, which is ramping up, because customers were going, what do we do? I mean, obviously, that's how we met, right? You reached out and said, hey, let's open AI thing. Can I speak to someone at Microsoft? And then obviously myself popped up with a couple of my colleagues, and we built a relationship off the back of that. So those were the kind of things that were changing for us, which is really, really exciting. And it's gathering even more pace now. It's snowballing.
What a genius move. Again, Satya, going for the partnership kind of thing. Taken, I think it was a stake in OpenAI itself so quickly. Mm-hmm. Think about it. It's not easy to get hundreds and thousands out of your company organization, as big as you are. But to see the CEO to sort of make the claim that we're going to invest billions in this and we're going to partner, this is the provider we're choosing, and it's going to happen that quick, unbelievable. That stuff doesn't happen so quickly, by the way. Working in and having a history of working in areas where you have to do multi-million or billion-pound partnerships, they take time. And that came out, and then it happened in a couple of months, and so you hear a threat of a possible competitor or a monster that could be built. And then you realize, 3 months later, oh, we have now a relationship where we can actually harness that and plug it into our tech. And that leads me on to the next question is, when I saw GPT, I literally thought it was a chatbot all over again. I've done this on Facebook Messenger. I've done this on WhatsApp. I've advised in a number of different organizations of, this innovation, don't worry about it. This one I kept watching. I didn't realize what was possible until I saw the Microsoft lens and that partnership. And when I heard the word of, you could plug this into Microsoft applications,
Yep.
mind blown.
Yep.
At that moment, the penny dropped of, wait a minute. Document. Someone can spell check for me, like, properly, and I don't have to keep right clicking, or Mr. Paperclip in the corner that we used to conventionally know is not there anymore. It will follow me around, and I can ask. It could be a live thesaurus. It's just literally like a friend that's going to do the work for me, or make things easier for me. I was like, I don't believe it. I can't believe it.
The next level of productivity.
Honestly, when I saw it, mind blown. I mean, I think I hounded you straight after that. Like, whoa, come on, over. You need to show me this. You need to explain this. How does this work? I think, yeah. I mean, this is why I'm labeling you the most popular man in aviation right now. That may die down, by the way, but enjoy it while it lasts.
I mean, you were one of the very, very lucky few to get early access, certainly within the UK. The feedback we had was fantastic. And I mean, you had it before I had it as a Microsoft employee, which is absolutely crazy. I think anyway, if I'm trying to tell customers about it, I should have access to it first. But yeah, that's by the by. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, building in a generative AI or a chat GPT into every single Office application that most people on the planet use every day to do the boring, do the mundane, do the presentation work, do the legwork. I mean, there was a perfect example I watched on one of our internal sessions the other day. It was about PowerPoint and GPT. And first of all, it was able to build an entire presentation stack with speaker notes from a simple prompt to go do this for me. Went away and did it. 30 seconds. It was, I don't really like format. Change the color of the titles on all the slides for me. Now, if you think from a manual perspective, I have to do that slide by slide manually. 2 seconds straight in. The amount of time it saved. We've just come out with the shared index reports. 77% productivity increase for those customers that have been using early access. The product's not even finished yet, and it's already a 77% increase in productivity for the thousands of people that were using it.
And this is one thing that working in software and being around technology and stuff that impresses me so much about this journey that we've seen as consumers, customers, and partners, everything like that. The launching of the product so fast in a potentially raw state, gaining feedback, turning it over, going on. You got to remember, this wasn't established products already, right? The Office Suite is an established product already. Yep. I can't imagine you had this on your roadmap, for a while. But to turn your whole organization and pivot the size of Microsoft overnight, in short, but getting everyone to train, retrain, all that. Again, like, what does that feel like on inside? Like, you had your roadmap, that's all set out usually conventionally into and this massive disruption comes where you have to pivot, where we're seeing your probably competitors and others not pivot fast enough where you made that. How did you as an organization receive, get told, and move? Was there upskilling, training? What does that look like?
Oh God, there was a lot of gaps when we were going through it because there was such a buzz about Copilot when it came out, which is obviously the GPT product that we're talking about. There was fairly sort of minimal information to start sharing internally, and yeah, Microsoft turns like it's towing a massive trailer. I think, in my opinion, when it comes to this sort of stuff, and there was just sort of trickles of information feeding down. We get the fantastic marketing fizzle reels and sizzle reels and all that sort of stuff. Looks fantastic. Our number one job, first of all, when it came out, which was to download every single one of the Copilot videos that had marketing spins on them and just get them in front of customers, just show them. And then whatever feedback, FAQs, questions, we took them away, fed them back in a product group came back, and then we fed them back to the customers. And it was just that cycle. And this is another thing that Satya has done beautifully is we fail fast. So something don't work, try something else. The amount of products that we've attempted to develop, acquisitions we've tried and it's not working, spun out over the last sort of 5-10 years has been very quite numerous. And some stuff works, some stuff doesn't. It's as simple as that. And this is one product that has paid off beautifully. Like the gamble was absolutely huge. There was potential risk of this turning into another blockchain scenario. I do apologize. I know you're heavily invested from a blockchain perspective. But again,
it wasn't a bubble.
Yeah.
But it wasn't it maybe, but still, but now you've turned it on its head and actually given
this will be the standard.
This
Will be the standard for future. My kids, your kids, maybe in the future, they won't join anywhere that doesn't have generative AI built into their productivity apps. Why am I going to have to work 10 times harder where there's already something off the shelf that could do the grunt work for me, where I can focus on more innovation, more complex stuff, more interpersonal communication and things like that.
So there's one key thing. And I don't think anyone's going to have the answer to this. And this is going to be a controversial point. I love the concept. I love the idea. But now think about what we said about the digital skills, the mobile skills, compared to take your father and your mother, for example, and how they worked. Hard work, manual work, the exposure to that. And I know generations are changing. I know there's a lot more effort going into building resilience in younger generations and teaching them new skills that may be learned in different methods, in old school way. Interpersonal communication. There's a difference, right? Like this is different to, we could have done this over Zoom or WhatsApp for ease or something in someone in a digital world. Will AI make that us soulless and characterless?
It's a good question. No, I don't think so. People thrive on interaction. We have to have face-to-face communication to make things work. It's just how humans tick. Certainly how I tick anyway. There were times during COVID I was sick of looking at my two dogs and I needed to see other people outside my house. And do you know what? I think even though kids are glued to devices and everything's done over WhatsApp and text message and Instagram and stuff like that, there still has to be an element of people to people. That's how deals are done. I don't think that's ever going to go away. Certainly it might change in terms of the format, but the best deals and the best kind of communication, in my opinion, is face to face.
You say that. I literally could end up negotiating with AI. You put it through yours, I put it through mine, and they'll be talking to each other. And we're waiting on the side having a coffee.
Yeah, it could happen.
I know what you mean. I get that, and I'm not trying to be old, by the way, and I'm literally trying to be forward thinking. But there is a genuine challenge here of, while technology is excellent, it takes something away from the human being's development, as it were. And that is my only slight fear, other than policing, and if it ever takes over the world, that is another fear, but we'll come on to that. But that element of, like you were saying, the human touch, human conversation, if I know you're sad or, I can read that, I can use my personal history or experience to console you or talk to you in a certain way and change my communications. With AI, I could be someone that is not an extrovert, but I can make my language sound like I'm an extrovert. I can just say, please use a tone of voice that's really happy and really energetic. But that's not me. Like, do you get what I mean? The soul is being taken out. I'm sort of misrepresenting what I may actually be like. I feel like we're a long way away from that, but it's just that heeding that warning sign that you can kind of be whatever you want to be. I get that. You can do that.
I absolutely get that. I think it comes down to a personal decision, right? When you get into this sort of stuff, you make the conscious decision. We've seen it with one of our products, GitHub Copilot, at the moment, where the developers that I used to work with previously, I asked them about it. I was like, "You guys using it?" I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "I can guarantee I can pick out the ones that are using it as a crutch rather than an actual productivity tool. So the guys that are just feeding code into it just to get their job done, that's it." And that's personal choice. And those individuals that are using it as a crutch are the ones that aren't going to move forwards. They'll be doing the same. You remember we were talking about coasting? That's the new coasting. Just letting AI do everything for you. The added value to AI is the human on top of it. We call it human in the loop. It's exactly the same thing. There's universities that are building generative AI applications to detect whether or not generative AI has been used in dissertations and paperwork and coursework and things like that, because they knew straight off the bat people are just going to feed stuff into it. and those people that feed
What
stuff
it
into
would
it.
be to be in university right now, honestly. Honestly. I'd absolutely smash it.
Oh, dear.
No, I think no, that's a fascinating conversation. The ethics part of AI and stuff, because this is an uncharted territory.
There's no policy.
There's no policy.
No.
There is no guidance. There's no experts. There's going to be bad actors, definitely. There's going to be great and good actors. There's going to be great and good that comes from it. There's dangers. I mean, I've seen videos of adverts and stuff of young. I think there were just a mock video of a young girl who's now older who tells her parents that there is an AI out in the world, in the metaverse, as it were, from the pictures that you posted of me on social media.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it, but that stuff sort of scares people. And
I think there's another one where you can you feed in recordings and pictures and clips of a loved one that you may have lost, and it can recreate it in that person's voice and the way that the mannerisms in that video.
yeah, no, a lot of it's going.
That is a creepy way of doing things.
There's another one where you can visit your passed away or dead relatives in a room. So you put on a VR headset and they're back, their voice is used. Does this start going a bit too far, or is there a too far?
Does anyone have the answer? I don't think so. I don't until stuff gets tried. I don't think we know. I was at a conference the other day. It was predictive aircraft maintenance conference, and there was a panel of policymakers and legal people. Normally not the most exciting panel in the world, but they were talking about in predictive aircraft maintenance and the use of AI and the use of data. So with predictive maintenance, aircraft use a proactive approach before something fails. Exactly the same in the automotive industry. So if something in an engine is working outside of a normal operating procedure and it starts alerting that potentially it's going to fail, and let's say that particular airline decides not to do anything, they've had the alert, they've got the data, they've got the knowledge, and then an accident happens with that particular part. But to the letter of the law, letter of the policy, they followed the manufacturer's guidelines. Should they be in trouble for that? I think morality, absolutely, 110%. If you've got the information in front of you and you don't do something about it, absolutely. But again, there's no policy governing that. The whole thing's based around warranty documentation, and part of a business that was built, 30 years ago, yeah. This is still exactly the same. Everything needs to catch up. But until things start happening, I don't think we know if it's too much yet.
I mean, yeah, it's a mind-blowing space. I'm so thoroughly intrigued, and especially the soap opera drama that's gone on. I mean, yeah, let's talk about that. Like, what was your take on that? I mean, on a Friday, 2 weeks before that Friday, you see the release of, GPT Turbo, this next level of interaction that you're going to be able to have. By the way, you can't upload video and ask it to do something on it yet, which is highly irritating. So if you're listening, OpenAI, that's one thing to address. But yeah, the next level, live internet and doing all that sort of stuff, it looked pretty cool. You can make your own GPTs, monetize on that. I mean, there's a lot of people doing some cool stuff. Again, I feel like it's still at a basic level. There is a lot of intelligence to come because you need probably other infrastructure to connect with that. But that happens. He's the front face. Nothing seems amiss. Everything seems fine. All of a sudden, Sam Altman has gone. He's been removed. Next day, Sam Altman is now working for Microsoft. Again, genius move. Absolutely genius move. To hire someone to say, you're going to get a whole division, research department. I'm going to be honest, as an outsider, that was probably the death sentence in OpenAI if that had happened. Continued on. And then by the Sunday, Sam Altman is back again, back into meetings on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
You're following the space. You're in the organization. Are you cheering that he's in your organization now? Great, yay, lovely. It's going to be amazing working with. Oh no, he's gone. Oh, how does that work? What happens here?
Oh, there was so many emotions through that very long weekend, and absolutely, I'm waiting for the Netflix documentary on it. 110%.
I can see it. I can see the Justin Timberlake in it. You can see literally the Facebook type video.
Do you know what? I think we still don't know what happened. Well, certainly I don't know what happens there. It's information that I don't think will be shared.
Yeah, we're massively speculating on a number of things. But
in terms of Sam coming across, wonderful news, fantastic news. I was like, okay, so he's gone. I was like, does that mean he's going to spin up a rival? Oh no, he comes back for us. That's fine. That's great. We've got one of the most forward-thinking individuals on the planet, certainly within my time working for Microsoft. And I was typing his name into Teams, waiting for him to pop up on Teams so I could say hi. I don't think he got through HR. And then very quickly, it flipped back. Satya made a couple of announcements, and then he flipped straight back to OpenAI. So the information that I'd sort of speculated from sort of news outlets, because this wasn't being an official line, but fed by Microsoft down to us, was there was some form of lack of communication between the board and Sam. Sam, whether he left or got fired, I have no idea. Satya then saw the opportunity and said, "You need to come across to us. We need to keep this train moving." And at the same time, if you looked at X, I think it was 500 out of the 700 all stood with Sam and said, "We're all going as well if the board stays." And then very quickly there was a very quick change of board. Sam leaves us, very quick tenure, leaves us, goes back to OpenAI. Satya is 110% as we are behind OpenAI. And you know what? I'm kind of glad it stayed like that. That OpenAI is a partner of ours, and we're not like completely owning the product set from that point of view when it becomes a Microsoft product set. I think it's very important that OpenAI keeps its identity and it keeps its DNA, because it's going to be separate to what Microsoft do on a day-to-day basis. And even though everything's built on Azure, our cloud platform, we're not necessarily feeding into what the product needs to look like in the future. They have their own, they're the experts in the field. They're the experts far and wide from this perspective. And it's important to keep them owning that rather than moving into the Microsoft mothership from that point of view. So even though it was a bit of a weird weekend and stock price was doing like that, I think it's ended up perfectly fine, and I think it's in a really good place.
Yeah, I mean, it's again bold move by Satya. I don't know why an Amazon or a Google didn't swoop in. Like, I would assume.
I don't think anyone had the opportunity. It was too quick.
It's too quick. I think that it just brought to life, like, these are humans, and I don't know, there's a lot of stories, like, a lot of people saying, they were talking about something really game changing, or that is a challenge to the human race, or things like that. This is the scary part, and where you need someone ethical and especially someone in his position of power, we can determine. But when he's even gone to the likes of stuff like Congress and things like that, put himself forward, he's actually said that that is a risk. We need to stay on top of it. You need to regulate it. I'm asking for regulation. Very rarely do people go and ask for regulation, but that's an amazing thing. So aside from that drama and the episode of Sam Altman, let's talk about the juicy stuff. Bring it back to aviation. AI has been around, machine learning's been around a bit in aviation. You're in the unique space where you're listening to a lot of voices, a lot of use cases and stuff. And by all means, you don't need to name anyone or anything like that. We keep that to you. But what sort of amazing use cases or amazing interactions are you having that you're sort of saying, geez, like, this is very forward thinking, or this is completely game changers? Name me some of those scenarios and use cases, even for someone who are in other companies maybe listening but that may have never even heard of this. So it'll be good to cover that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and this is my opinion. So there's two things that frustrate me about aviation: operational failure and customer service. Those are two of my biggest bugbearers. One of the main reasons I like aviation is obviously outside of the physical aircraft and the operation of those. It's the customer experience all the way through. First, as a provider from a tech perspective, but also as an individual, as a personal individual, I like to have a nice experience all the way through, and I'm intrigued around what every single one of these different airlines is doing. So, if we take a look at it from an operational perspective, and you take a look at an airline doesn't necessarily just do long haul, they do a lot of short haul, very similar to an organization that you work for. Operational failure to an aircraft, to a crew, has a huge knock-on effect. And I experienced one about 2 months ago. It was actually when we met in WAF. We were delayed 4 hours, something like that. And it can be, unless you're sat at the bar for 4 hours, it can be absolutely soul-destroying. But if I've got meetings on the other end that's been completely shot to pieces, or if I've got my own my own individual addenda, it gets shot to pieces. So operational failure associated with that is a real big problem. So a use case that we're looking at with an airline at the moment is predictive failure of operations for an aircraft. So those can be parts can go wrong. So that's proactive maintenance.
Yep.
That can be crew fatigue, crew failure. There's certain things you can't do anything about, the weather and all those sorts of things, but you can predict it as much as possible, but risk scores associated to, therefore potentially extending times between aircraft. I know that has a revenue impact, but at the same time, there needs to be an algorithm to make that decision around, is it better to delay this aircraft slightly and push the time back on scheduling the flight, or do we just take the risk and then potentially have to pay everyone an absolute fortune from a compensation perspective?
Yeah.
So from an operational point of view, that's one of the use cases, quite interesting. The other one is obviously customer experience all the way through. Now, this can take many different shapes, forms, etc. I don't know if you've any time recently trying to get in touch with an airline's customer contact center. Number one, I don't want to have to phone anyone. Shouldn't have to phone anyone. It's 2023, for God's sake. So a change of contact center and how people interact is number one, and that can be offloaded from a people perspective into something like generative AI. And we've got customers looking at that already. Same thing goes from an email perspective, from Twitter interactions, anything like that. Those can be picked up by generative AI. And we've got one customer doing that. So 20% of their inbound email from customers is being taken care of from generative AI. And that is from changing seats, rebooking customers, paying refunds, taking payments, all of those things is being done by generative AI. So they've already worked through all the PID information on privacy data and security issues, and they're making use of it. And they're taking the revenue that they've saved from expanding their call center and put that straight back into the fleet.
Nice.
So straight away, that's, we're already making profit off of this. Let's just reinvest it back into the business because it's revenue they didn't even expect. And they're going to scale that up as much as possible. The other one is, I think there's been quite a lot of buzz about it, a personal travel assistant is kind of the way I like to.
I hate that. I'm sorry.
Really?
I hate it.
Tell me why you hate it.
Explain the scenario, and then this has been attempted so many times. And again, I'm not against innovation. I'm all for it. This personal assistant that follows you around and along the journey and things like that, really sets a false expectation sometimes. You're not in control of the infrastructure, for one thing. When you go through tunnels, when you go through trains, and when there's black spots, dark spots of internet and stuff, you're relying on a lot of infrastructure to be able to communicate and stuff like that. A lot of people think about and forget about accessibility. People who have partial blindness, deafness, all that sort of stuff, and disabilities. That's another one. But this fascination that someone's going to stay with you and stuff like that. Yes, I'm glued with my phone, but I don't want to have to keep flicking through an app and things, oh, let me go over here, or can I change my flight, or what type, where is the gate, and things like that. It should, I don't know, it doesn't work. I mean, everyone's been trying this for ages, but yeah.
But I think they've been using it in the context of, here's a chatbot, here's an FAQ that I can respond to. Outside of that, I can't do anything. I do completely get where you're coming from that perspective. And one of the first use cases I had with ChatGPT was I was going to Paris for a long weekend. Build me an itinerary. Done it for me perfectly. Okay, cut out all the museums. Okay, it's going to be, what if it's raining? Oh, here's a load of indoor places. So you just take it further and further and further. And I was looking to see how far I could push it. I pushed it too far because it got confused and tried to send me to Luxembourg on the train. But still, it was getting there. It was getting there. And I think that's what I mean from a travel assistant perspective. And I'll use Amex GBT. So global business travel for Amex is fantastic, in my opinion. If I had a situation where I had a family emergency probably 6 months ago, probably a bit longer, and I needed to get back immediately from Seattle. It was 3:00 in the morning. I was like, I need to end my trip early. I need to be on the next flight. Yeah, sure, Mr. Williams. There's a flight in 2 hours flying out of Seattle, going straight into London Gatwick, bang, straight away. Now, if I'd done that through a contact center, ring them up, wait, and then just a load of faffing down the other end.
Yeah.
But in a situation where you can just instantaneously change your plans or add something onto them is what I mean by personal travel assistant. Multiple language, accessibility options, everything included as part of that.
And I'm all for it in that reality, but there is so much infrastructure that you're not in control of that needs to change to make that happen. Which is, again, the push to make it happen, to do it. There are a lot of legacy systems that may not be able to handle this type of tech, or you'll hit end roads where we're like, oh, can't do anything there, can't do anything there. Yeah. So there's a lot that needs to change.
There's a lot of legacy in the industry, right?
Massively. And that's why I sort of slightly question it. And it's not, when you say it verbally or you put it on paper, yes, it completely makes sense. And I'm kind of saying you're sort of bringing back brick and mortar sort of travel companies that you would go in to book into your hotel, and you'll ask, is this next to the hotel? What's around? Can you build me agenda? But you're sort of taking your own hand. So it's the next generation of brick and mortar stores to help you plan that and help you along the journey. But yes, the inspiration phase and during that's interesting. But I think everyone's going to drop so many at the same time. It's going to get confusing again for the customer. They're either going to want to go directly with the brand or with a Microsoft or an Apple or a global entity that they can trust. Because
we've already tried, right? And that's not gone particularly well for them.
Yeah. Yeah, even in GPT, the plugins, right?
Yeah.
The Expedias and the Kayaks, horrible experience. It's a learning experience.
Yeah.
Probably gained a ton of data for it. Hats off being there for doing it. Horrible experience. And again, then, what do you use those platforms for? Especially if you're your own brand. I get it. You're using your own. When you're a comparison site, how do I trust an AI to compare for me? Yes, on certain attributes, it will come in time.
Yep.
But I need to see it sometimes. Like, show me all the prices. A great one is who flies there. That is my biggest bugbear in industry. I don't know who flies where sometimes. I want to go to this destination, but who can take me there, for example? I don't know. It depends where you're flying from, who flies there, what time of day. That's helpful. I get it. It's just my fear is there's a lot of moving parts and other parts of infrastructure you're not in control of to give you that seamless journey. But the moment you start using it, get a bit of use, and want to do something advanced and it breaks, that's what often it fails and you fall off the road. I slightly denote it to voice when we got the whole surge of booking with voice and stuff like that. So that's my slight dampening of that piece. I don't call it massively innovative, but
I'll see myself out.
This is it. This is the whole challenge of the space. But wow me, please. I'm more than happy to. If it comes, I'll be there. But
do you know what? I think when people come up with those kind of objections, and they're completely valid. I get it. 110% get it. You have to remember, we're 11 months into this thing.
Yeah.
11 months. What happens when 10 years down the line? That's the pace of change and innovation in 11 months. Those plugins you were referencing, they're early plugins. They were probably done in the first 6 months. Probably a complete rewrite. I mean, to give you a perfect example, Microsoft wrote the responsible AI standards in 2019. This is 2019 when we kind of knew it was coming. In 2022, we tore the book up that we just wrote to rewrite it because it moved on so far. And I think that's going to happen with the general technology approach to things.
But then this is the challenge, right? Industry is moving so fast that no one's actually keeping up with it. Like now you have individual GPTs. Before you had plugins. The plugins are kind of redundant now, and now you have to make GPT, and that's in 6 months. So there's a lot of tech effort to go into learning, building for it to be broken again. So that used to happen in years. That was happening in months.
Yeah.
Possibly going to happen in weeks and days now. And the interesting thing, the thing I love about this space now that's happening is the regular person, I could go home and make my own GPT that sits next to an established brand, and a user could actually use it, like it, and I become my own sort of AI plugin kind of thing a GPT that someone uses. That is the decentralizing of the technology is amazing. It just relies on the human's brain rather than the technological capability, and don't worry about the API connections and data. We'll handle that. You just tell us the business logic or the use case, describe that, and we'll be able to build it.
That's why I'm so excited about the UK startup culture at the minute. I mean, I don't know if you saw the announcements today in terms of what Microsoft have committed to spend from an innovation perspective and an education perspective. So £2.5 billion with the UK government to accelerate the development of AI and education within the UK specifically. So within Europe, that's fantastic. Globally, it's absolutely amazing that we're going after that. So I think the perfect example what you just talked about there, someone can build a business in their bedroom overnight with a use case and good launch capability.
Yeah.
And they just keep building. So I'm so excited to see what the next 12 months is going to show. We're going to see new players in the aviation industry.
I can't wait. That's what it's going to disrupt the status quo, which is scary, but take the similarity to Microsoft. Something disrupted the status quo, then you quickly pivot to make the decision of how you deal with it and how you work with it. But there is I would be a fear factor, and I can just probably talk about it quite confidently. I think there will be a cultural clash in the world where it's going to be, these spaces are going to be disrupted so much that people are going to have to make decisions of, this is too fast, or let's keep going kind of thing.
I think you will have policy in there at some point. I think it's coming very, very soon from a regulatory perspective. There has to be control. I don't believe in any way, shape, or form we're going to have a Terminator scenario. We're light years away from that kind of technology, but there still has to. We still have to make sure we're as protected as possible when it gets into this sort of stuff. So, take cybersecurity as a perfect example. You can now use generative AI to brute force attack passwords at a ridiculous speed, and anyone can kind of do it in their back bedroom. So I think the same thing needs to happen from a wider perspective, and that's why we've tried to lead the way from a responsible AI standard perspective, but people need to take that on board and build their own on top of it. Because I remember the early days of things like facial recognition, bias and etc. around that point, and making references to specific genders and job titles and things like that, because they were written in such a way by certain people. They weren't written by a diverse group of people. They were written by one type of person, typically speaking. But that's all changed, and that's why I thought it was really important that Microsoft come out early doors. That certainly we as an organisation came out early doors with that standard, and it's not the de facto. It's not finished by any way, shape, or form. It constantly needs to be added and changed to.
Okay. So then I think now that sort of the question I guess I ask you, a lot of AI, a lot of the career thing, it's what's next for yourself, Dan? Dan the man, the person itself. What's next for you? What would you like? Where do you see yourself heading? What would be your ambitions? And what would you like to see in the travel space, especially?
That's a good question. I don't think I've thought that far ahead. So certainly for the short to medium term, I'm very happy where I am. I think categorically this is the best place I've been career-wise for a long time. The organisation has been incredibly solid to me as well. So I know we talked a little bit earlier about this, but 2 years ago I lost my mother.
Sorry.
No, thank you. I do appreciate that. I lost my mother, and the day I started at Microsoft, and the day that just burned and seared into the back of my brain, 4th of July 2021, and my mum was metastasized breast cancer, so it was incurable breast cancer. It was on the downward turn, and we've been through sort of a 5-year journey through that. And the first day I started at Microsoft, I needed to be in the office because it's obviously orientation, all that sort of jazz. And she was having a really bad day, and I had to go. My auntie wasn't available to look after her, so I had to ask my poor wife, to come and look after my mother, who wasn't well at all. And I went to the office and I did orientation, and I just didn't concentrate at all. Anyway, the point of this is, when you join Microsoft, you get an onboarding buddy, so someone in a similar role, potentially a different industry, to help you through everything that is Microsoft. And I was writing a message to him, basically saying, I'm really sorry I can't make this next meeting. And I accidentally sent it to my boss. And I hadn't told my boss anything that was going on. My boss was in the middle of a meeting with a bunch of execs with a customer, and he rang me straight away. And he went, sorry, are you okay? I went, no, sorry, I'm really sorry, but I can't make this meeting later. I accidentally sent it to you. And he was like, what are you doing? Like, drop everything and look after your mum? And I was like, okay, yeah, but I'll pick. He was like, just take the next 3 months off. Like, don't even worry about it. And that chap's Howard Lewis, and I still have a relationship with Howard Lewis to this day. And the response that I got from him got me through the next sort of 6 months to go, it's okay to not go to these things. It's okay not to be fully onboarded because there's this life-changing event that's happening in front of you. And you have to be there because there's only so much time left for that particular person. From that point, there was only probably about a month left until she actually passed away. So I did get to spend that month with her, which was time I'd never get back if I was working. If I didn't have that conversation with Howard, I would have been working.
That accidental message.
Yep. So it's really strange how that happened. But do you know what? It made me realise that cultural thing that I was talking about from a Microsoft perspective is so important. And that's why I'm so happy here from an organisation perspective. And I feel like they've earned my loyalty now as well. So a lot of people, they jump between tech firms to grab more money.
Yeah.
Don't need to do that. I'm happy where I am. I'm content. I'm not working till 4 o'clock in the morning, pitching at 7 a.m. Most of the time I knock off about 5 o'clock, or I go to the gym early, or, I have to deal with personal stuff. It's a good place to go. So certainly right now, I'm very comfortable where I am in terms of what's coming in the future. Outside of Brentford giving me a call and saying, do you want to play on Saturday? which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon.
I mean, Ivan Toney's not available, so it's
well,
possible.
Do you know what? I've got until January, so it could happen. Outside of that, one of the things I've always said to myself, and I know we talked about my fear of flying when I was younger. Obviously, I don't have that anymore. I'd love to get a private pilot's license. I think it's probably one of the big things to get off my bucket list, just because, number one, it looks so exciting. Number two, it looks very freeing from that perspective, where you can just go, I'm just going to go for a flight somewhere. Not in terms of, I'm not going to go to Singapore or anything like that, but I'm just going to go up in the air. Yeah.
It's a common thing. I've had a number of people that have sort of left, especially I work a lot of people in aviation. They're like, I'm just going to take a break and go get my pilot's license. And I'm like, well, that's going to cost a bit, right? But there are, it is actually quite attainable, especially now. We're not talking a commercial pilot's license, we're talking small plane, things like that. And you can do hired lessons, or where they let you take control for a little while. They'll do takeoff and landing, conventionally the hardest parts, or the whole whack. So it's quite something. I mean, it's out there. I mean, it wouldn't have come to my head to do, but
I mean, if I was to do it all again, if I was to talk to myself at 6 years old and I'm like, you want to be a pilot, trust me, you want to be a pilot. If I was to do it all again, that's what I would do. But I think moving forwards, I'm very content where I am. I love the industry that I'm working within. I love the company that I'm working for. I love the interactions that I have with my customers. We were laughing before that you're my customer and I'm your customer. So it's really good to have these types of interactions. So I think I'm content to see where everything's going to go over the next couple of years. I think that's probably going to dictate where I go from a professional perspective moving forwards.
Amazing. And that little segment there, I mean, thank you for showing. I mean, that, that vulnerability and putting yourself out there is not a bad thing in any workplace. I think that's quite key. And to all our leaders and people, managers out there, that personal empathy, that little moment that person took to tell you take that time off will stay with you for probably the rest of your life. Enough for you to mention him here. And that person gets on with the day, it probably makes no difference, but they've made an imprint in someone's life. And I think we've spoken about it previously, where sometimes you need to adjust your conventional mindset, especially when the next generation of workforce as well, who are may not be so resilient, may not be exposed to so many different things. You have to support them in different ways, whether that's language, whether that's time, whether that's effort, or even just education, mentoring, anything. There's a lot of help that people are kind of asking for, but they don't verbally saying it. They're either saying it in a different way, actions, or to their colleagues, and are feared to reach out. Sometimes I think people need to take stories like this and say, don't fear. There are really good people and leaders out there, and you should, go for what you're, right for and what you need. If you need headspace, if you need time, a lot of people are making effort in doing that. There are a lot of leaders who take that stuff seriously.
Yeah. It's quite regular in Microsoft for people that have been within the business for so long to just take a 3-month sabbatical and then come straight back and everything's normal. And you know what? I think that's fantastic. Sometimes you do have that burnout period of just, you've worked in an organization for too long, you've been doing the same things, you just need to take a break. Go traveling for 3 months.
Yeah, fly with me.
Fantastic.
That's always good. No, I think that's like the sort of perfect way to sort of transition into the next part. I guess we talked about the journey. We talked about where things are going and where you want to go. I guess the one thing that we didn't end up talking about is, your sort of bugbears with aviation. But I'm going to cover that in a special little segment that we call the sort of quick fire round. So I'm going to let you take 5 or so minutes to think about your answers in the background. But yeah, I think, Dan, it's been an amazing journey to sort of meet you and get you here in this room. I know you're literally the most popular man around and at various different workshops, conferences and presenting and, coming over here on this humble little podcast and having this deep discussion. I'm truly thankful. And we've had amazing conversations over the past year on various different topics. And I guess the last thing I want to ask is sort of, and no one ever really asked this, so that's what I'm putting out to the audience of, why did you choose to come onto the podcast? Like, it's sort of irrelevant on the side here, doing nothing, just a hobby.
It's too late now. I can say anything I want, right?
Well, yeah, I can edit it out. But no.
Do you know what? I came on this podcast because I really respect what you're doing. I think you're approaching things ever so slightly differently to the rest of the industry. The aviation industry is very professional, very tight-lipped when it comes to this sort of stuff. So I think when you can have an honest and open conversation with people from all parts of the industry, I think it's fascinating. So I already told you when I arrived, I listened to Bo's podcast 3 times this week, and it's only been out, 2 days? Yeah. So I listened. Fantastic, love it, absolutely love it. And I think this is a really good opportunity for people to get into the industry, because I think personally, I think it's going to struggle with the new generation coming through the workforce. There isn't enough done around actually showing what the industry is about and how you can have fun in it and how you can build a career in it. I think it could potentially struggle. Whereas if you look at different sectors, they're doing all weird and wonderful things to try and bring in new people, because it is an employees market out there. It's competition to get the best people, the brightest people in your organization. And I think from an industry perspective, this is a fantastic way to do it. And plus the decor is quite nice.
There you go. I mean, that's our pitch. It's literally that. I saw a gap in the market of quality, real human conversations. We peel back the conventional, not just talking about CV and how you got to where you got to and ending it there. It is, no, tell me about the mental challenges. Tell me about the emotional drain and how did you overcome these things. Give me practical advice so I can tell those other people and expand. The industry isn't just a pilot, cabin crew, check-in staff and things.
So
there are tons of people that make up this ecosystem of travel. Even if it's a simple customer just flying to a destination, there are thousands of people involved in that. And that's what I want to bring to light. And it's not just about, CEOs possibly coming on. We definitely want you on, but coming on and telling them what they're doing on the brand. It is saying their story of how I got to where I got to. It's so beautiful to hear that you came from such humble beginnings and gone through those challenges and your journey of where you're getting to is, and you're content with it. And it is amazing. And you are in this, melting pot of, innovation right now, and it's blowing your mind. But your dream was to do football coaching and that's your sort of passion. It's such an amazing journey. And how we're linked is you've completely gone in technology and I'm in travel, but we are linked because, like we said, we're customers of each other.
Yeah.
And you build this deep network and conversation around. And those skills, those conversations, that's what I want to bring out, especially to the youth of tomorrow, the employees of today, and share the stories of people who worked in the space of yesterday kind of thing. There are some amazing stories to share, and hopefully we've seen that throughout the podcast. But no, it's a perfect way to end. Thank you so much again for coming.
Thank you.
And what we're going to do now is one of the most popular segments, actually, strangely enough, why people like that. So I'm hoping you've seen this before in the previous one. So
I've been mentally preparing for this all week.
There's going to be a few curveballs, so be aware. But let me know when you're ready to begin, and we'll go from there.
Quick drink.
Yeah, no problem.
These are one-word answers, are they?
We're going to go one word, but then you can go a bit further than that. And if I ask for context, by all means,
Okay.
I want to know those things. So
Ready?
fine, cool, all right. Favorite aircraft type:
747.
chicken or beef,
Chicken.
aisle or window?
Aisle.
Really?
Yes, really, because I don't like stepping over people to go to the bathroom.
Okay, yeah, no, we've had
Selfless individual is what I am.
That's thrown me off. Favorite book to read on a flight?
Business book.
Any you like?
Really like, I know it's off-brand, but I liked Jeff Bezos's last one. Autobiography, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Satya's Hit Refresh was very good. Rich Dad Poor Dad was very good as well.
Favorite airline to travel with?
No comment. You can't make me say that. Cannot make me say that. It's a UK-based airline.
iOS or Android?
iOS.
If you could sit next to anyone on an 8-hour flight, who would it be and why?
Steven Gerrard, just because he's an absolute legend. Might need GBT translator for the Scouse accent, but be okay.
Careful, he might slip.
Foretaste.
Yeah. Are you an early lounger or a late check-in dasher?
Early lounger.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Beach break or city break?
Beach break.
Favorite holiday destination?
Greek islands.
One interesting fact that no one knows about you.
I had a heart attack when I was 29.
Just. I don't know what it is with me bringing people who are having heart attacks at young ages, but please take care of yourself. Okay. That's really thrown me off. That genuinely has thrown me off. No, in all seriousness, advice that you'd give to your younger self.
Don't panic. Don't need to have it all figured out. It will come together.
And the one thing that you'd change about the aviation industry.
Bring the 747 back mainstream.
Well, that's a long shot, but it definitely was the sort of queen of the skies.
Oh, absolutely.
It was. And one of your favourite memories of travelling?
Flying home to see my family in Northern Ireland when I was a child.
Any distinct moments?
Apart from, well, we got booted off Aer Lingus because it was me and my brother. We were travelling by ourselves, and I was too young to travel without a responsible adult there. My brother's only a year older, so we switched to Ryanair, and Ryanair pulled us out of the bag and got us across in plenty of time, and had a fantastic summer in Northern Ireland.
Probably charged you for breathing, sitting.
Absolutely. They charged us an absolute arm and a leg to get it done. But yeah, I was a child; it didn't really bother me at that point.
It wasn't yours. Amazing. What a great way to end. Again, thank you so much for coming. It was a brilliant conversation. Again, we have these raw conversations, and many of the time we do this all in one take because it just goes so well in terms of flow. I can't thank you enough for taking the time out. Again, by all means, I'll put your details down. Some of the great work that Microsoft are doing for inspiring the sort of next generation of workforce. We'll put some links down below. I've got the links for Dan on his LinkedIn. By all means, reach out to him. If you're young, even if you're older, if you're currently serving, drop him a message, build a network, and take that step. Just take that step. All you're doing is making a new connection in the world, and I'm sure something great will come of it. Thank you again for viewing, listening, and subscribing, and again, we'll see you next time.